Hello, welcome to my knitting reflections. It's been a month or so since the last time I sat down here. Today I've got a lot of sunlight coming in through the window. It's actually a little bit warm, but there's actually music playing down near where I live, so I've decided to just tough it out and see how it goes. I don't have that much to talk about today because even though I have been on holiday, I actually didn't knit as much as I had planned in the last couple of weeks, mainly because, well, school started again, and then when I did go on holiday, I spent a lot of time reading instead of knitting, which was also a nice thing. And maybe something I also want to reflect on a little bit, because this has probably been my best reading year of all time. Actually, it's easily been the best reading year of all time. So I kind of want to think about a little bit why that happened. Why did I have such a good reading year? But of course, if I'm reading physical books, at least, it's hard for me to also be knitting. So, although it is a little bit easier with Kindle. So I'm going to first start off with the two objects I have finished. I think I already talked about these a little bit the last time. The first is my little scrappy socks I made for a friend of mine, using a really gorgeous wool hand dyed in Pittsburgh by a dyer called Miss Naughty. It's a really gorgeous base, really squishy, really lovely. And I used a garter stitch short row heel, and yeah, they're really, really, really short, but I used every single scrap of yarn I had of these two. So the darker wool is the last remains of a Malabrigo sock yarn that I had that I made a hat for my husband with. So that's it. That was a really good use of the yarn. It was the first time I ever split the yarn into two piles using a really exact scale, so that I could make two exact socks, because I knew I would barely have enough to make both of them, and I was right, I barely had enough. So yep, those are done and they're ready to be sent. In fact, I've actually been putting off sending these to my friend because I kind of wanted to film them, but yeah, now I've filmed them, so they're ready to be sent. And then the other one, this is my second mini mock neck tee, or mini mock neck tee, I think, by Jessie May. I made another one earlier this summer. This one still has like a couple ends to weave in, and I used this really gorgeous like alpaca yak wool from a German hand dyer here, whose name I can't remember, but I'll put it up on screen. And it just feels like true luxury. And I think also just such a sunny, gorgeous color. Yeah, it's going to be a great underlayering piece for the winter, in my opinion. Yeah, so she lives in Atlanta though, so I don't know. Maybe she can use it just as the layer. So things that I did differently with this one, I think I talked about this a little bit the last time. I actually cast on for a medium, but then I made like the straps and so on size small, and then I also basically made a much shorter neckline because she just kind of wanted a really short crew neck, and I knit it significantly longer. I did a tiny bit of waist shaping, but only really a small bit, and then I basically knit until I had almost no yarn left. I didn't play super yarn chicken because I did feel like it was quite long enough, but I'm really happy with how this turned out, and it fits really well. And unlike the original one, which I think kind of shows a little bit maybe your bra straps, not on the sides, but maybe here at the top, this one doesn't, because it's, you cast on more stitches, and then, yeah, you cast on more stitches. I don't know, that ends up making it kind of wider, even if you're narrower. Yeah, so that's what I did with that one. Really happy with that. This is a great pattern. I like all of Jessie May's pattern, really. Maids? I'm not really fully sure. Aside from that, I do have one other non-Nutiden project going right now. But yeah, the only thing I have is a tiny little piece of a sock. This is my on-the-go knitting project. It's really nothing to look at the moment, just the toe. But what is interesting about this sock is the yarn that I'm using for it. So I've got 2 yarns. The first one is this one. This is what I'm making the body of the sock with, or all the sock with, really. This is a wool that is, I think, an easy wash wool. So it's not a super wash wool. It's definitely a little bit more toothy. And you can see running through it, there are these like white stripes. This is, or white fibers, let's say. This is actually a like linen spun. So I think it's got some percentage of linen. Unfortunately, I've thrown the exact tag away, but it is by Schoppelwolle, which is a German wool brand. And this was their attempt at making a non-nylon sock wool that was still pretty durable, but also, again, yeah, non-superwash. And if you look at the actual sock, I don't know if it's picking up on camera, but you can see that there's this other kind of lighter red color running through it. And that's because I'm holding it with this unknown fiber that I got from my mom's, I found in my mom's stash. I'm pretty sure just from the feel of it that it is a nylon. So I'm hoping that will give the toe a little bit more stability. And then I'll do the same on the heel, add a little bit of this on the heel. I actually have another enormous ball of this, so I don't really know what to do with it. And I thought that this would be kind of a nice use of it, since I'm very sensitive to nylon on my chest area, so I won't be able to use it in, like, let's say, a garment. So a sock is perfect for this. So I'm excited to see how these wear. I've tried and failed to make one sock out of this before. I tried a different heel construction with this. I think I tried an afterthought heel for the first time with this wool, and I ended up making my sock way too small. So it was really, really, really unsuccessful. I've thought about, unpicking it. But because of the heel construction, it would be difficult to unpick it. However, if I do ever run out of this wool and I'm halfway through a sock, I would unpick that original sock. It's kind of nice. I have a couple of socks where I only have one sock. I think I have 2 or 3 that basically the reason I only have one sock is because the sock either didn't fit me or didn't turn out the way that I had expected it to. So it's kind of more like an example of like what doesn't work for me as a sock. I guess other people must have that too, but that was when I was starting off my sock knitting exploration, let's call it. Now I pretty much always know what to do with sock knitting. So yeah. So toe up, vanilla sock. I'm not planning on doing anything special with this. It's funny, I have so many like cute, interesting sock patterns saved, especially ones that have maybe texture on them or some color work, but I almost never gravitate towards them because usually when I'm knitting a sock, I'm knitting them kind of to go. It's the kind of knitting I do in public transport or when I want to have like a on-the-go project. So it's a little bit, it's less ideal to have one that has like some kind of complicated pattern, but I don't know, maybe that'll change at some point. Okay, so the next, and this is kind of my, this is a spontaneous cast on. As you know, if you've been here before, you know, I'm in the middle of working on the Nostalgic Sweater Coat by Albiona McLaughlin. I've gotten about to the waist, so it's knit top down, done both sleeves, knit to the waist, and now it's just a bunch of knitting and purling back and forth. It's really heavy. It's using 2 strands of Nutiden held together, and it's quite hard on the hands, I find, because you're using kind of small needles for that weight of yarn. And as a result, I really wanted to knit with more Nutiden. I was also kind of craving a little bit of color work, but I didn't want to knit on that project. So I chose a free pattern called Rug, or The Rug, and it's a beautiful pattern, beautiful color work pattern that uses a lot of different patterns within the body of the sweater. There are some very long floats, as you can see. For example, here there are some really long areas of where you need to float your yarn. So I used a technique called ladder back jacquard that I'd heard about in other podcasts before, and also I read in some of the Ravelry notes about this, that they had used ladder back jacquard. So I made my own charts for it. I also significantly modified the pattern to be a bit smaller because it was rather large. And Nutiden yarn, at least this one, is not very drapey. This one is much more structured than maybe other Nutidens I've used before, Nutiden fibers I've used before. So definitely required, I needed to make it smaller. So I modified some of the charts. I put those up on my Ravelry if anyone's interested. And yeah, it's been really quite an exciting journey. So let me talk a little bit about some of the modifications I've made. The first one was that I made some modifications at the top, but those don't really apply anymore because when I was done with the body without the sleeve, I realized that the neck was way too high. So it was kind of basically coming up like a funnel rather than actually going over my shoulders, even with pulling. So I ended up having to go back to this first line of color work, and I ripped back basically all of what I had done for the neck. And then I went back in and I did some more short rows and just shaped the back of the neck the way that you normally would. And I ended up with this, which is fits really, really well now. It's supposed to be a very oversized fit with a very low armpit. So that part still is that way in this design or this version of the design. I also made this internal pattern a bit more compact so that I needed less repeats, but then it was still symmetrical. And I also put less spacing between these kind of crosses at the top. I changed a lot of the different measurements to fit a kind of a smaller frame. I also, on the sleeves, I picked up like a different number of stitches, obviously, and kind of winged a little bit. When I was knitting the sleeve the first time, I ended up not doing the decreases early on, but started doing decreases only after this pattern repeat was over. And it ended up having a very strange shape, sort of like, like a trapezoidal shape, like where it was kind of straight. And then it kind of went back in, which I really did not like. So yesterday I ripped everything out, which with Nutiden is its own challenge, and I've reknit it and it looks so much better now. So I'm really, really happy I did that. And I know now that, knitting the second sleeve is going to be really fast because I'm not trying to figure out what the numbers are going to be. So this project will probably be done by the end of the week, maybe by next week maximum, and then I'll be ready for some cold weather. And the two yarns that I'm using here, the white one, if you follow Nutiden, this is a colorway from the springtime called Alchemy, and it looks kind of white or off-white or gray depending on the lighting, but in sunlight, which is what I'm trying to knit it in, it has like colors of purple and green and rust and sometimes even yellow and green, things like that. So it's such a gorgeous color. And then this sort of darker brown, black color is one, I think I mistakenly called it Musla in the past, but it's a different one. It's supposed to look like the outer shell of a mussel, and it's just a brown with sort of purple, little veins of purple running through it every now and then. So really, really fun to work with, and yeah, I'm really enjoying this. I've always wanted this sort of very oversized sweater that has this cool pattern on it. I mean, it really looks rustic and like something that, could have been made in the 80s. But what I like about this is the way that I've ended it, it really does fall at a nice area. So I'm really happy with this. I'm excited to wear it. I think it'll look great with jeans and just a lot of the things that I already own. So that is the first thing that I've been working on the most over the last couple of weeks. And then just this week, I was actually going on a trip with my school, and I really wanted to bring some Nutiden knitting with me, but I didn't want to bring this massive sweater with me, which sort of reminded me of when I first started knitting. I was reading a lot of Elizabeth Zimmerman books, which Elizabeth Zimmerman, if you don't know, she's like the fairy godmother of knitting. She wrote these more like recipe style books for knitting. I want to say back in the 70s and 80s. I know she also had like a TV show at that time. Anyways, her preferred method of knitting is definitely to knit like garments bottom up rather than top down, which is kind of the more standard way nowadays. And I've knit now 2 or 3 sweaters bottom up. And one of the great advantages of it is it's a lot easier to travel with. So what I basically started on was just a sleeve. This is really freestyled. It's with one strand of the black color, the sort of muscly color from the Nutiden, and I'm knitting it on 4mm needles. I started, I think, with 44 stitches, and I've increased up to about 50, 60 stitches. And I'm at the point where I am trying to decide whether I like this silhouette. So this is just sort of a standard sleeve, and then I'm going to make a raglan, raglan style pullover is my plan. But one thing that I've kind of liked while I was trying it on, so I was often trying it on like this, because just to see the length of it and so on. And I kind of like the look of this more bell sleeve. I mean, it's not really a bell sleeve because it's not so wide, and the needles are very small circumference, so it's hard to tell. And I've been toying with the idea of actually ripping out from here and continuing knitting on from here upwards, and instead at the bottom ending with like a couple lace, like a lace edge, and actually making it more of this bell sleeve, which I think would be really cool. So I'm basically, my plan when I don't know what to do next in a project or whether I should continue is I just put it away, and then I just think about all the pros and cons over the course of like a week or sometimes longer, and then I go with my gut usually in the end. And I don't know, I feel like I have quite a lot of standard sweaters already, and I would like something a little more unique, even though I know bell sleeves are really not very practical, and definitely like a tight sweater as well is not that practical for me, but it would be nice to try something a little bit more out of my comfort zone. So we'll see how it goes. Also, my increases are very haphazard on the sweater, so it's going to be really challenging trying to recreate it, but that's a different problem. So those are the things I've been working on. Lots of Nutiden. I also acquired quite a lot of new Nutiden with the Llamas collection. I bought quite a lot of Nutiden because I really liked the colors in that collection, and so I do have a lot of Nutiden knitting in my future, which is really great because I if I had the choice, I would basically only ever knit with them. At least right now, at this phase of my life, I'm feeling like, I love knitting with them, with yarn from that company. So anyways, last thing I guess I can talk about is what I'm wearing. I've shown this before. This is the Sarah vest. I think it's originally just supposed to be like a sweater vest, but I knitted it in a Noro yarn, and I've been wearing it a ton this summer, so it's really paid off to have this. It's it's got lots of great things in it, like linen and silk, I think, but I'll put them up on screen. So that's pretty much it. Thanks for listening, and let me know what I should do with that sweater sleeve. I really am I feel like, I don't know. I keep going back and forth whether I should make like a standard sweater or like a fun sleeved sweater. Especially since I'm going to be like designing it myself. I don't know. We'll see. Anyways, that's all for now. I'll talk to you next time. Thanks for listening.